Kako vještačka inteligencija unapređuje digitalni marketing? Zašto biznis modeli moraju biti humaniji? Što se krije iza fenomena velika ostavka i zašto milioni mladih u svijetu napuštaju posao? Što možemo naučiti o kreativnosti od drugih naroda i kultura? Kako se ljepota koristi kao strategija? Ova i mnoga druga zanimljiva pitanja zaiskrila su na konferenciji Spark, koja je poslije 3 godine pauze na sceni auditorijuma u Portu Montenegro okupila sve one koji žele da se nađu tamo, da citiramo moto konferencije, gdje se biznis srijeće sa digitalnim inovacijama. Tokom 2 dana na sceni su se smjenjivali zanimljivi sagovornici. Jedan od njih, koji je zapalio publiku smijehom i zabavnom interakcijom, na pozornicu Sparka donio je temu kreativnosti.
How do you actually research creativity?
I've been studying creativity for the last 25 years, and I define myself as the creativity explorer. So to explore means to venture into unknown territory in order to learn more about it. So I have gone and interviewed people who creative people around the world that most people never have interviewed before. So for example, I went to North Korea. What can we learn about creativity from the North Koreans? I went to the poor people in the slums of Mumbai. What can the poor people teach us about creativity? I want to understand, I want to interview all kinds of human beings and find all kinds of creative ways to approach creativity in different cultures and different countries. So I've researched creativity in over 70 countries, all continents, and it's not like I want to, I'm not saying everyone in China is like this. I want to understand what can I learn about creativity from the Chinese, or from the North Koreans, or from Thailand, or from Holland, or whatever. So, okay, I'll give you one example. It's a little bit long, but I'll give you. It's from Thailand. So I interviewed a Thai person. She's a paper artist. I didn't do this in the speech, but I'll give it for you. She makes like origami, very, very creative origami. But I was asking her, what do you do when you get stuck? Like if you don't have any ideas, what do you do? And she says, I go for a coffee. And I say, okay. So what are you thinking about when you have the coffee? Are you thinking about the project or the problem? She goes, no, I'm thinking about the coffee. Okay, and then what do you do? Then I go back, and what do you do? Then I start to create again. So what she explained to me that in Thailand, in the West, we have this creative anxiety, like writer's block. We get stuck, and like, oh, we have all this anxious, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I'm stuck, what should I do? But in Thailand, they don't have this. They call it sabai sabai, which means don't worry, just be happy. So what she does is she called it an idea nap. You know, like a power nap? So if you're stuck in an idea, just go have an idea nap, go do something totally different for a while, drink your coffee, enjoy life, go in nature, and then come back and work on your project again. So you don't have to be anxious because your creativity is not flowing at the moment. Just take a break. And that's what we can learn from the Thai people, to just relax a little bit.
If you are to distill the essence of your 25 years long research journey, what would it be?
One would be to be curious about how other people do things, because humanity is doing so many different things in so many different ways. And even if it's parenting, like how do they parent in Philippines? How do they parent in Singapore? And they are doing things in other countries that would be better than you do parenting, or I do parenting. So be more curious and pick up the best ideas from different cultures. And if they do things worse than you don't take it. But if they make things better than you, then you take it. And the other one is other thing I would say is that to understand the potential of human creativity. Humans are very creative, but we could be so much more creative if we truly embraced our creative abilities. So I talk about humanity to the power of ideas, and by that I mean I believe that humans have huge creative potential if we just teach them how to access it. And that's what I do. I teach people how to access their creative abilities and make people more creative. Because, and that's the third one, if we understand that creativity is the most important human power after love, because creativity is to make things better. We have one way of doing it, but now someone come up with an even better way of doing it. So creativity is how we make the world better. That's what creativity really is. It's not something fun, it's not something artistic, it's improving the quality of life on the planet. And if we look at it this way, we understand that, wow, why are we not investing more resources, more time, more energy into creativity?
Da je ovo veoma važno i aktuelno pitanje potvrđuje još jedna priča sa Spark pozornice, priča o velikoj ostavci, kako je nazvan do sada nezabilježen fenomen u istoriji poslovanja. Prema podacima Američkog biroa za statistiku, u 2021. samo u Sjedinjenim državama preko 47 miliona ljudi je dobrovoljno napustilo posao.
It's definitely been confirmed by studies. I think there was over 4 million Americans that handed their notice in August last year, which is the biggest ever known in one go. So yes, the Great Resignation is very true and very much a threat to businesses if they don't act in the right way. The Great Resignation is being driven by the last 2 years of the pandemic. We've all had time to really reflect on what's important to us, what do we want to be doing, how do we want to be living our lives, and that's meant that we've all re-evaluated what we want to do and how we want to do it, and that's impacting where we are for work and what the kind of work we do. So that's why we're seeing a big migration into the types of work that people want to do, and they're resigning from their jobs in order to achieve that.
Who are people behind this global shift, and why are they resigning?
The biggest group that are handing their notice in at work now are Gen Z and millennials, because they really want to define how they're working and the type of work they want to do, and they want to pursue that purpose-driven work for the rest of their lives. So I listed in my talk the reasons why people are leaving, and it's things like toxic company culture, not getting paid enough, not doing work that's meaningful towards what they want to achieve. So yeah, there's those sort of drivers in the Gen Z and millennial age groups that are really pushing this shift that we're seeing worldwide.
How companies deal with this reality?
I think companies really do need to think about purpose and individual purpose, as well as attracting people with really clear company values, because if your purpose aligns with the company values that you work for, you're more likely to be happy and you're more likely to do great work and stay in that company. So having companies really think about their purpose, their values, and then finding people who want to work there to achieve that will enable company success. I think now people want to feel listened to. Everybody operates differently, and the amount of time we spend in work, our personal lives and work lives are crossing over. It was always that you didn't really talk about what was going on outside of work. You just got your head down and didn't really talk about your mental health. There's a bigger movement in being open about your mental health and in workplace, and being able as a leader to talk to people about what's going on in their lives means that you can then make adaptations to help them do their best work. So I think it is the most important skill a leader can have.
O liderstvu, kako nam je danas potrebno, posebno inspirativno je govorio oksfordski profesor Paul Collier.
We've evolved as human beings to have two evolutionarily stable styles of leadership. One is the dominant alpha male, I know best, bragger, and they're always disastrous because they surround themselves with people who daren't speak truth to power. So they get wildly overconfident and they're actually very ignorant. So they're dangerous. If you think hard enough, you can think of a few leaders like that around the world, both in business and in politics. But we've got this very different model, which is also evolutionarily stable, quite unusual amongst mammals, and that is where we are purposeful and pro-social leadership, which builds together a sense of common purpose. And it looks forward and it says we together can innovate, can create solutions to problems that at the moment we can't solve. And that process of creativity around a common purpose that looks forward, that's the secret of really good purposive leadership. And the genius of it is that it inspires, it brings out the best in the rest of us. So it's not just that we have a good leader, The good leader inspires us, lifts us up to be larger than just myself now. Instead, we're not lifted to be saints. That's a bit too demanding. But we are lifted to work together to strive for a common purpose.
You stress that common purpose is also crucial in business leadership, and you brought up Toyota's story as an example. What can we learn from Toyota's story?
Toyota, if we go back 50 years, was a little upstart company. It didn't have the scale of General Motors. It didn't have the cost advantages of General Motors. Toyota was producing a long way away from the American market, so it was all disadvantages. But the Toyota leadership of the time dressed exactly the same clothes as everybody else. They ate in the same canteen as everybody else. And so they were able to say we. They weren't getting out of a corporate jet and saying, you are the problem, work harder. They were saying we. And they explained to the workforce, we have a common challenge. We've got to try and break into the American market with no cost advantages, with no technology advantages. Our only possible advantage is if we produce cars that are of very high quality. They are really reliable. And the only way we can do that is if we spot faults at source. And so they created the concept of quality circles, which was a little group of a workforce, maybe 10 people, on the production line who were jointly responsible for those few meters of the production line. Now the line is a line. To make cars, it's about 2 miles along the production line, and it's an integrated process. So the bits go in at one end and they come off as complete cars at the other. These 10 people here, they're responsible for this little bit of the line. If you spot a fault, faults are treasures, says Toyota. Faults are treasures. If you spot a fault, report it at once. How? Well, there are cords hanging down the production line. You pull a cord, the entire production line stops straight away. Does that cost money? It costs $10,000 a minute to stop that last production line. So you can only afford to do that if people have already bought into this common purpose. What are we trying to do? We're trying to produce cars that are so reliable that Americans will buy them. General Motors at the time is the most profitable company on earth. It takes 50 years before Toyota wins, but it wins so decisively that General Motors starts as the most profitable company there's ever been, and it ends bankrupted. And it's bankrupted by Toyota.
Na ovogodišnjem Sparku bilo je riječi i o vještačkoj inteligenciji, prednostima koje ona donosi, opasnostima koje može izazvati, kao i o različitim načinima na koje je već ugrađena u poslovanje mnogih kompanija.
First way is more acceleration, making things faster. Machines just inherently are faster than humans at many different activities. For example, you and I could count a few objects pretty easily, right? But if we had to count, say, millions of them and classify them as to what color they are, a machine is much better suited for that. The second way it's changing things is with accuracy. Anyone who's ever spent any time typing something into a spreadsheet knows that it's pretty easy to make mistakes. And if a machine's doing a lot of tasks, then it can reduce those mistakes. And the third is it reduces the number of mundane tasks that frankly are not well suited for humans. For example, I used to work at an agency, and there's this one poor person's job who all they did was copy and paste things from Google into a spreadsheet all day long, right? And I was like, clearly this is an automation opportunity. And so by taking that task away, because I'm not taking the person's job, just their task, by taking that task away, it frees them up to do something that they're better suited for as a human. So those are the ways that AI helps in marketing broadly.
How companies are currently using AI?
Yeah, companies use AI in many cases for efficiency and in some cases for scale, right? You want to be able to do something at scale that you just don't have enough people to do. For example, AI right now is really good at writing something pretty mundane like a press release. Now, if you and I as humans, we could write one press release, 2, maybe 3 in a day. A machine can create millions of them in a single day. Because it's so templated, because it's so common, it's an easy thing for machines to do. So that's an example where you can scale way beyond the capabilities of what 1 or even 100 people could do.
Could you give us some more examples?
One of the critical uses of AI that's very common is what's called attribution analysis. So if you're a company, maybe you're a soft drink manufacturer, you want to know how are people coming to your website and from where, like what's working. If you're spending all this money on ads and billboards and all these different things, can you figure out what's working so that you know where to better spend your money? And the answer is yes. Using a certain type of machine learning, it can assemble all of the different information that you're gathering about customers and boil it down and say, here is what this is. The analogy that I used in the talk was, if you think about all of your customer data as like grape juice, then the output of some of these most advanced models is like rakia, right? It's going to be something very distilled, but has all of the essence of the original, but just the important parts.
Here at Spark Me Conference, many future-relating topics are discussed. What do you predict regarding short-term or long-term future when it comes to artificial intelligence being productively integrated into our daily lives?
Artificial intelligence is already part of your life. If you have one of these devices and you've ever used the driving app, the Maps app on here, you've used AI. You are literally being driven by a machine because the machine's telling you turn right here, turn left here, 300 feet ahead. Oh, there's traffic, you should probably avoid that. And all of that is machine learning. If you use a service like Google or YouTube or Facebook, everything you see is assembled by machine. Machines are making recommendations. If you watched Netflix, for example, every time it says, you might also enjoy this show, you're seeing the results of AI. So it is already everywhere. For companies in particular that are interested in leveraging it more, the future for them is, where's your data and is it in good condition? And then do you have the talent, the people, and the internal processes to work with the technology to bring it to life? And that's where companies will struggle the most, is not with the technology. The technology is pretty well proven at this point. It is, does your company have the raw materials needed? Right? If we're talking about distilling rakia and you have apples and no grapes, like it's not going to be, it's not going to turn out how you think. If you have a pile of sand, it's really not going to turn out how you think. And that's the challenge for companies, is you have got to have really good data to make use of this. That's your raw ingredient.
We've discussed the advantages of artificial intelligence. What are the disadvantages of AI?
There are massive disadvantages to AI. There's the one that everyone thinks about, which is, oh, machines are going to take my job. And that's only somewhat true. The real danger of AI right now is in that exact word you used, bias. Right? Every piece of data that goes into these systems has some kind of bias, and sometimes it's a bias we don't allow. For example, in 2018, Amazon created a hiring recommendation system. They trained it with a specific set of data that had a bias that they didn't realize. And when they turned the system on, it stopped hiring women. Immediately, just stopped. Because all the resumes, all the CVs that they had fed into it were all male. And they didn't realize that at the time. And so one of the dangers we have to be aware of with AI is, what are we putting into the machine so that we have a predictable result coming out? Think of AI as like a blender, right? You don't need to know all the inner workings of a blender, but if you put in sand and you expect to get out a margarita, you're going to be disappointed, right? But if you don't know that you're putting sand in, then you're just surprised at the end product. And so that's where we have a lot of work to do as an industry, as a civilization.
U poslovnom svijetu u kome vještačka inteligencija i automatizacija imaju svijetlu budućnost, velika je vjerovatnoća da će čovjek ulagati manje napora na poslu, što prema nekim stručnjacima predstavlja veliki problem. Autor knjige Frikcija, Dave Beers, poručio je sa pozornice s parka da je život bez fizičkog i psihičkog napora, naprezanja, frikcije vrlo opasan po naše zdravlje i po naš lični i profesionalni razvoj.
Well, it's natural for humans to go frictionless. They've been wanting to go frictionless since they invented the wheel, to create less effort for people, to make things easier. And over time, we've done that. And we've now done it to the extent where we've gone from hunting and gathering to then a little bit less effort when we did farming, a little bit less effort when we're working in a factory, to now, we sit in a seat. And sitting is the new smoking, as they're saying now. So we've now given ourselves so little effort that our bodies are not designed for that. Our bodies are designed for running out in the prairies, hunting animals, climbing trees, and we're sitting in seats, and it's killing us. So that kind of led to the sort of thinking behind this book with one of my friends.
So you just referred to the importance of physical friction. What about mental friction?
A lot of people would think that, hey, we're civilized. We do more thinking now than humans did all that time ago, but actually we don't necessarily. I think there's probably pretty much the same amount of mental effort was involved when you were hunting for wildebeest with a spear on the plain. And that is one of the interesting things that I think we are now actually, we've got less mental effort. People are saying they're busier than ever. But what are they busy on? I mean, we're seeing Netflix viewing time going up. The amount of time that's spent playing computer games is going up. But people are saying that they're really busy. People are playing Wordle. And the truth is they're not pausing. And it's not giving themselves the opportunity to be bored makes them feel that they're busy, because they fill up boredom time with things on their devices. But our devices are actually causing us to use less of our brains, because we're outsourcing our memories to our devices for memorizing phone numbers and photos and videos. We're outsourcing our skills, so we're using maps on here that tells us where to go. We're using the calculator on our devices. And technology is outsourcing our decisions so that we no longer have to make many decisions, or our decisions are easier because technology is just pushing us over the line. It knows how to trigger us to choose something. So that is all having an effect on people's minds. And the less we use our bodies and the less we use our minds, the worse it is for our mental health and the worse it is for our physical health.
Speaking of health, you also stress that we need more humanity in the business models. What do you mean by this?
A company doesn't care about humans, but they expect the humans to care. That's an unequal balance. So what has happened, that a lot of the people who succeed in companies succeed through demonstrating sociopathic traits. That is, being unhuman, being inhuman, that they are leaving their humanity at the door. They're coming in and they're saying, it's nothing personal, it's just business. I'm sorry, but when you're dealing with people, everything is personal. And the research that we're seeing is that business leaders who actually care, they don't leave their humanity at the door. They take their humanity with them, and they actually care about their team, leads to more profits. It's better for the bottom line. People stay at the company rather than moving on to other companies because they know they've got a good thing. And they're emotionally engaged in it. They work harder. They put in more effort at the end of the day. Discretionary effort. And that all comes from just the simple thing of taking your humanity into the office with you rather than leaving it at the door. So the more that we can do to get rid of the sociopathic traits within a company, the better the company will perform. And it's, to me, the 1980s way of doing business that we saw in films like Wall Street, that just people are animals and it's just greed is good, it's all about money. That is dead. And we need to be moving towards a situation. And the strange thing is that businesses are asking me, well, how do I treat people like humans in the workplace? And you're like, are you serious? How do you treat people like humans outside the workplace? Do that in the workplace. It's as simple as that.
Could this be one of the reasons behind the Great Resignation?
I think that this is one of the big movements we're seeing at the moment. People are talking about the Great Resignation. They're talking about people who are leaving companies because they no longer believe in them. And I don't know the stats because I've not done that much research on it, but the one thing that I do know is that this younger generation if they feel that they're not getting the emotional reward, the experience out their job, as well as the money, are going to leave. And the world has changed. When I got involved in my career at the very beginning, I got involved in advertising because it was the only way that I could make films, I could make pieces of music, radio, I could work with photographers. So to me, it was the only way I could access that. Now anyone can do that. Shooting 4K movies on their phone, editing on their laptop using free software, releasing it for free on YouTube so that millions of people can see it. That wasn't available to me. So I had to go into a job to do that. If I was around now, I would never go into a job. I would just use the tools that I've got to create. Because for me, I'm a creator, I've got that hunger to make things. I would never go into an industry, I would do it myself. And I think we're seeing more of that kind of attitude amongst the younger generation as well. And it's totally understandable.
I dok nove generacije uveliko mijenjaju poslovnu paradigmu, gomilaju se izazovi sa kojima se suočavaju kompanije. Kako poslovno uspjeti u svijetu u kome više nije tako lako dobiti investiciju, u kome rastu kamatne stope, a igru diktiraju velike globalne tehnološke kompanije?
Anyone who had a vision would take money, whether their vision was really supported by something worthwhile or not. Now it's changing. Money is no longer growing on trees, as it were. There isn't so much liquidity because interest rates are going up. What will that mean? It means that the priorities will change and people will be a little bit more demanding in trying to see how exactly are you adding business value. So that's going to change the opportunity map for entrepreneurs and for large companies alike.
Does this mean that it is going to be harder to get an investment in the future?
In a way, I'm saying that it is not going to be only based on whether you can sell nicely. You need to have a little bit more substance. I think that before, everything could get an investment if it sounded sexy. Now, you need more than simply sounding sexy. You need to show specifically how you can add value.
When it comes to adding value, what is relevant?
You need to show how you're going to be using the money that you get, the capital you're going to be using to create some value for the firm. In the past, only generating more excitement in terms of getting more customers, even if you lost money, was enough. Now, getting more customers and losing a lot of money is not going to be as tolerated as it was in the past.
In this new context, you refer that there is a significant difference between big tech companies on one side and the rest of the business world on the other side. What is this difference about?
So the other thing that I think is increasingly becoming clear is that not all of these platforms are the same. There are some platforms that have too much power and other platforms that don't have too much power. There are some like big tech, like Google and Amazon, that are trying to not only, and Microsoft, and that are trying to not only continue being powerful, but using the new technologies like the metaverse to become even stronger. They're trying to shape technologies to their own advantage. That means that they will continue being perhaps even more profitable, but also that they have the risk of reducing competition and making it harder for the rest of us. Then we have the other companies, the others that may be big, but don't have the same amount of power, the same amount of strength. And I think that in an environment that is becoming a little bit more complicated, people will start understanding these differences and recognize that there are a few unusual companies that we shouldn't use as examples and that we should think actively about regulating. And then there are many others where they're going to be value add as an ecosystem, but without having these extraordinary advantages and benefits that they have. What can you do as a company that is not so strong? And the answer there isn't to try to be a small version of Facebook, a small version of Microsoft, but it is to say, can I participate in an ecosystem that someone else has put up? Can I be a partner of one of these big technology firms? Can I be someone else's complementer, someone who works with many of these big tech firms? And the answer is, you can. There are a few things that you need to be more careful in terms of what you do. You need to think about how you will create value, not only for the customer, but also for the other members of the ecosystem, for the orchestrator, and also for the other complementers, and to think about how you will become less likely to be pushed around, either in terms of losing your connection to the final customer, or by becoming more recognizable, and as such, someone who cannot be easily substituted with another complementer.
Ovogodišnji Spark, pripremljen u rekordno kratkom roku za samo nekoliko mjeseci, donio je uz tradicionalnu financijsku podršku kompanije Domen veliku raznovrsnost tema, govornika, interpretacija aktuelnih poslovnih dilema i izazova. Iako je 2013. koncipiran kao konferencija posvećena digitalnom marketingu, Spark je vrlo brzo izašao iz te niše i obuhvatio obilje različitih tema.
Onda smo 2015. napravili prekretnicu u smislu da je potrebno da ima neki element digitalnog, ali da može da bude iz apsolutno bilo koje sfere ljudskog i ponašanja i bivstvovanja. U međuvremenu smo imali i astronaute, i kiborge, i poljoprivrednike, i umjetnike. Tako da pitanje da li je u međuvremenu to postala svjesna namjera i da li dizajniramo program na taj način, odgovor je apsolutno da. I nastavit ćemo da ga dizajniramo na način da bude što je moguće više ljudi koji nisu usko iz oblasti biznisa, preduzetništva i digitalnih tehnologija, ali koriste ove alate da bi život svoj, organizacija, zajednica i generalno ljudi učinili bolji. Zadatak Sparka, znači Iskre, nije da da gotova rešenja, nije da mi obezbijedimo kuvar i pratiš recept za uspješan život u digitalnom dobu, nego upravo da podstakne tu iskru, da pokrene sve nas na itekako duboko razmišljanje.
Učesnike koji su raspirili tu iskru razmišljanja svojim govorima, strašću, šalama, pitali smo što unosi iskru u njihov život.
My creativity is sparked by meeting new people from new cultures. So the reason I accepted to come here was because I have never spoken in Montenegro before. And I wanted to understand what can the world learn about creativity from Montenegro, and I think I found something. I can share it with you. I haven't done enough research, but Montenegro is one of the friendliest countries I ever been to, maybe the friendliest. Unbelievable friendliness here, and it is genuine. And what I realized is that if you are friendly, you make more connections, because friendly people connect more easily with other people. And if you want an idea to happen, you have to have connections. So if you think about it, if you want your ideas to happen, you have to be friendly. So that's what the world can learn from Montenegro.
What sparks my life? Just being able to travel, being in Montenegro is absolutely amazing. So it's a beautiful, beautiful country, and I'm very grateful to be here. So yeah, this has sparked me.
What sparks my life is curiosity. I am curiously persistent about many different things, and I like to try and just understand what's happening or understand why things are the way they are. So before this trip, for example, I was studying just casually. You have Montenegrin and Serbian and Croatian and Bosnian. You have all these different languages, and then you have things like Ukrainian and Russian and Polish, and they're all Slavic languages, and it's trying to understand how did this evolve. And I'm just curious about it. That's what motivates me, is I want to learn more about something. When I was putting this talk together, the original slides for that section on how AI works use pancakes. Which is more of an American audience. And when I was Googling, I said, okay, well, what's a popular drink in Montenegro? Rakia. Like, okay, now I'm going to learn all about this thing. And then I was able to incorporate that in the talk, because at the end of the day, part of the joy of conferences and events like this is getting to meet new people, go new places, and learn about new cultures. And that's really exciting.
What sparks my life is the unknown. So I get excited about these areas that I know nothing about. So any area of ignorance, anything that can make me look stupid, is what sparks me, because I want to fill that with knowledge.
What sparks my life? Curiosity. I want to understand how things work, what things are, what is behind them. So I've been curious since I was a kid, and I'm trying to continue being as curious as when I was a kid.
I was a poor boy who was enormously lucky. Both my parents left school when they were 12. I grew up in a very poor part of the country, actually the poorest part of England. And so I saw life at the bottom. I was incredibly lucky to get from that existence to where I am now. And I know everybody who's successful does that with a large element of good fortune and with a large element of other people helping. And so that's what sparks me to say the future of the Balkans doesn't have to be a repeat of the past.